of entertainment, current events, and Hollywood. Don't miss Creator to Creators, hosted by the filmmaker Meosha, known for the Shudder hit documentary Horror Noir and the acclaimed film Anatomy of an Anti-Hero, Redemption. This show features interviews with filmmakers and creatives from around the globe. Join the fun with guest celebrities and gain valuable insights. Subscribe now and follow Creator to Creators.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Creators to Creators today. Today we have a special guest.
I am Deri Tyton.
And I'm Deri Tyton.
Welcome.
How y'all doing?
You know, I love going back to the beginning. I always say the beginning charts our trajectory in life, our little habits we pick up along the way, follow us into our adulthood. This is a question, either one wants to kick it off. Tell me a little bit about the beginning. How did you guys get into it, as they say, the love of the arts? How did it all start for you?
So I am a filmmaker from Chicago, and back in probably like 2000, around like 2000, 2001, I had lived a life, a part of my life that I wanted to talk about in the 90s. And one of the things about that was I felt like it was a great story. It was about a female drug dealer and a poet that fell in love with each other. And not just any drug dealer, but like a kind of big time drug dealer in the city of Chicago. And as a spoken word artist, I always felt like, what did they have in common? What drove them together? And it was that kind of love story. So what I did was I wound up finding a way to write the film. I wasn't a screenwriter. I wasn't a filmmaker as of yet. I wound up finding a way to talk to some people at Chicago State University about writing a screenplay and filming that movie. And then I wound up filming it, getting it edited and doing all of that stuff. And it started winning some awards and some festivals. And I started it got a distribution deal and things like that. So it was a kind of thing where it started in 2000, 2001, and then like the distribution deal came in like 2006. Nice. So through a company called York Entertainment. And then, so that's my beginning. And then it was some other movies that I had wrote. One was called Party Line Pimpin'. And then from Party Line Pimpin', which changed to The Party Line. Which was like this thing in Chicago where you could call on this dating thing, and you could meet people and meet up with them. And so I thought that was a good comedy. And then when India came to Chicago in 2007, I was already working on like my third film or my fourth film. Well, my fourth film, but it was actually my third film that got produced. And that was Love Bones. And then I introduced her into kind of like that kind of component of independent filmmaking. And so that's how it all started for me.
Nice.
I've been around the arts all my life. I come from a very artistic family, in music and the arts, like theater, everything. So I kind of was born into it, I would say, as a dancer. Ever since I was little. And then I come from like a musical family, so I was always singing. And just around 1999, I think, I'm dating myself, but anyway, I started working. I got my first formal job in music, the music industry. And I've just I worked primarily in music, but I did like some film production. I even did like a film. I had like a couple credits on like 2 BET shows, just different things like that. And then, but mainly in the music side. And when I moved to Chicago in 2006,
7.
No, oh, sorry, 6, 7. like 2007. Deri was working on a film. Um, and when I saw, I mean, that was my first time. I had seen both of the other films that he did, but um, that was my first time actually being able to see him as a director on
Yeah.
set. Um, and we started working together because I already had like a background in like production. It wasn't film production, but it was like events, different things like that. So it kind of worked together
That's awesome.
like that. But I pretty much have always been in the arts.
I mean, you have such a long career and you've built your remarkable career in, music, education, filmmaking, entrepreneurship. I mean, you have so many hats that you wear. What has, um, motivated you to pursue such a diverse, creative path?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I was motivated to do it. What I will say is that Um, I realized early on that I was a person that was blessed with a lot of different talents, and it took me a while to figure out. Sometimes it was overwhelming trying to figure out like how to actually, um, make it all like create synergy with it all. And I know that you can't do everything at the same time. But I always wanted to. I was always cognizant of the fact that and just mindful, like just as far as like wanting to use my God given talents for something. So basically, what happened was I realized um, after a while of just being an artist, like a music artist, and just working behind the scenes in film, that I also wanted to add another component, and I wanted to use my professional background to help artists. Because I started getting frustrated working directly with artists and seeing that they lacked leadership skills. And
Yep.
so that's how I found out that I could merge like my professional background and my artist background. And I've always been committed to finding ways to help
Yeah.
the art community, no matter, across all genres. But yeah, now I have a clearer path, but it took me a long time to
Wow.
figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking back on your career, like which were some of the, I guess, defining moments that helped shape the artistic and leader that you are today?
That's a great question. And I would say one of the things I would say is that it's in my DNA. The reason why I say that is because like my grandmother, she had her own jazz band. She also created like a community theater. Um, yeah, and my family like put on a lot of different productions. And so before I want to say that because leading up to it, I didn't really understand why I felt like taking on such a leadership role,
Hmm.
you know, until I got older and was able to really appreciate the background that I really came from. Because I'll say this, I spend a lot of time before I even like really truly embrace being an artist,
Yeah.
kind of running away from it because I didn't want to be like a starving artist, even though I didn't really see any, but it was always like this whole thing like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Right.
And when I started to see that this is actually a part of me, that's when I became more, that was a pivotal moment for me.
Right.
Going from just knowing that I was a talented person to
Mhm.
understanding that I'm not only a talented person, but it's my responsibility to extend what my family has already contributed to the arts.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. Deri, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. I know.
I
I'm amazed all the time at like how much her family has accomplished and
yeah.
how much she put the pressure on herself to add to the legacy of like not just a couple generations, but like you can go back like 4 or 5 generations of like black excellence.
Yeah. Exactly. And I just love it. I love when just hearing a woman's story because I know how hard it is, like just doing all those things and making it look so good doing it, you know.
Thank
Um,
you.
absolutely. Derry, looking back on your career, as a filmmaker and as all these things, what was a moment when you realized filmmaking wasn't just a passionate like passion, but it was, your life work.
One of the, I think that whenever you're in a position to see how I really do believe when somebody approaches you after you complete a film and they say, "Hey, that's good," and I relate, and I did, when they talk to you about it, then you start to understand like how big that is. But it when you go beyond film and you start to see how film have moved me in a way in which it has like made me choose some better decisions for myself,
Hmm.
or how music has influenced us, or how reading a book has influenced us. And you get a chance to talk to a producer or a songwriter or a singer or a author. Those moments I think is the moments where I feel I've been compelled to do a self analysis, do a self examination, and say, hey, I think what I'm doing is the right thing, about writing these stories, And sometimes even when I'm writing, I could feel a sense of me inside of the story
Hmm.
of me trying to explain myself to myself, that decision. And a lot of times what you tend to get is people can relate to that. That's that real human aspect that you put in there and somebody say, hey, I relate to that aspect of it. So I think that's what it really comes down to when other people get the chance to identify, who you are as a person
Yeah,
in your work.
definitely. And speaking about that, identify, who you are as a person. I like that a lot, what you said, because your films, they often explore themes of love, identity, emotional transformation. Why do these like themes resonate with you strongly?
Uh, Honestly, we're all on the journey of self discovery, right? We're
Yeah.
on that path, And a lot of times, I think those are the movies that I like to watch. I love a good love story. I love a good story of one's trying to, understand oneself, why they making the decisions.
Hmm.
And I think those kind of stories are the kind of stories that, most people, whenever someone says to me, hey, I have a story to tell, you should film my movie or you should write my movie for me. 90% of the time, that's exactly what the story is about. It's some type of self-love story of how they began to learn how to love themselves, or some story of some, self-examination of emotional transformation in terms of how they saw the world, what their mom or their pops did to them. So I think those are the stories. Not only do I enjoy watching, that's the story that I come from, and those are the stories that most people want to tell and watch too.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Is there any films that right now that you've seen as of late that actually kind of does that, but does it well?
I think if I had to pick a movie that does that and does it well, I think if I had to choose a movie that did it well, I would probably say Is God Is. And I don't want to kind of get
I know
too
it's a good
deep
one.
into. But Is God Is was definitely, an emotional transformation of, one sister, a sisterhood, which is
Hmm.
a love story between two sisters, motherhood, which is, without telling the story, but what does motherhood look like for one person? What does motherhood look like for another person?
Hmm.
And you have motherhood themes running throughout it, right? You have, which they showcase how one mother left her children per se, and you have another woman who was leaving her children per se,
Hmm.
And then you have a mother who is learning what will it take to be a mother.
Right.
And I think those three stages of being able to understand the emotional transformation of, what it does to sacrifice, what sacrifices do you have for your kids, and then you have fatherhood, things like that, like the transformation of fatherhood, or you have, characters who don't arc, and I think that was a thing that that kind of played, that ran throughout Is God Is about the father, like he didn't arc.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was who he was. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Phenomenal acting. I really enjoy. I enjoyed the film for sure. Um, you founded the Film Mechanics to help aspiring writers move from concept to completed screenplay. What inspired that? Like, what as far as like to create that program, and what is the, I guess, the biggest mistakes do you think that new screenwriters, make?
Yeah, they don't structure. They don't buy into structure. I think a lot of new filmmakers, uh, they don't outline. They don't understand what structure really is, like the three act structures, or who are the individuals. They don't read about screenplay writing. They they have been tricked. I'm gonna answer this in two parts. So let me answer the first part of it first. So the film mechanics came by way of when I was in film school, when I was getting my master's in fine arts and creative writing. One of the things that I didn't understand was that in order to write anything, you needed a process to write it. And I didn't have a process. I was just that kind of individual who I got like 4 or 5 screenwriting books open. I got screenplays. I got, windows on my computer open. And I got like all this information going on to write this one screenplay. And it's different for every screenplay. Like I'm literally approaching it every screenplay completely different.
Right.
And I guess I was on YouTube one day and on while I was in film school, and I was listening to somebody and they was like, yeah, you got to have a process to how you write, how you start this and how you do this and how you, and I was like, a process, like a writing. And I started to research that. And then that's what I found out. I didn't have a process. And then I also found out that most people who are writers don't have a writing process. In
Hmm.
order to work in quote unquote Hollywood, let's say the Hollywood structural component, like you need a process, like you need a writing process because the whole system is built on structure or a process and how they give us the information. So that's how the film mechanics came about. It just came about with so many people asking me to read their screenplays. Can you correct my screenplay, this, that, and the third. And then I was like, okay, well, my process is this. And it goes, I am a story person, then I'm a character person, then I want to know my theme, then I want to know my central dramatic question, and then I want to write a log line. So I want to know my story in 10 words or less, I want to know it in 30 words or less, and then I want to kind of go into, okay, what structure do I use? Do I use Save the Cat? Do I use Michael Haig structure, 6 stages of plot structure? Do I want to do John Truby? Do I want to do, the nut cake, the nutshell technique? So what structure am I using? Am I using a combination of structures? How do I tell this story in this particular structure? And this is what's needed. And from there, I kind of do an outline. And from there, I just go into what is like a treatment. And then from there, I start going into the screenplay. So I go 10 words, 30 words, then I go into an outline, then I go into a more emotional component of a 3 to 5 page treatment. And from there, I kind of understand the story, how the characters are motivated. I do some character stuff. I do some world building stuff just to kind of flesh it out, what's the inner, the outer journeys, things, all of that stuff, whatever. And then from there I go into the screenplay. And then 9 times out of 10, literally 9 times out of 10, I don't get a lot of notes.
Hmm.
I do not get a lot of notes in terms of like rewrites,
Okay.
which is different from when I first started. I would get a lot of rewrite, a lot of notes, because I didn't understand character development, story development, and things like that. I didn't have a process.
Yeah.
And then from there, just helping as many people as I can. I started teaching classes in the library. I started getting grants to teach classes, and then it just kind of went from there. Then I wrote the book, the Film Mechanic Screenwriting Workbook, a screenwriting process that sells. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, the book itself was an ode to me not ever forgetting my process.
Right.
That's why I wrote the book, so I wouldn't forget my process.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
would literally forget my process. So
Wow, that's amazing. This is for your wife. You guys are pretty much like the power couple, right? Um, you and your husband, have been at this for a while, for a long time. And you're often described as a creative power couple. How did your shared passion for storytelling bring you guys together?
Um, well, during like a lot of times I come up with ideas, but Derry is like as far as um filmmaking, like the story, he comes up with a lot of stories. And but then he'll approach me with an idea, and a lot of times we'll like flesh it out and like come up with different aspects, or I'll just like add to it or whatever, add a different perspective. I think we just complement each other because just in general, because we both are artistic, but we also we have a lot of other like qualities that complement each other. But
Yeah.
we are also both the oldest in our family, so
Okay.
we're both like natural leaders, and so we also have to flush through. When we go through that process, we have to work through that as well. But for the most part, I am a writer myself,
Yeah.
but as far as writing the screenplays, that's usually because he's the film mechanic. He usually does it. But as far as like the development and like character development, like when we're going through the treatment, if it's something we're working on together, then we'll just talk it through.
I love that.
yeah, I would. I think one of the things of it is we don't just like sit at a table and necessarily talk it through. Like we go on
Oh
walks,
yeah.
I
and those
love that.
walks really help us to connect with each other a little bit more. I feel like I feel like I'm gonna throw this out there. I feel like by being out in on a walk in nature, and we argue less.
That's good.
Oh
Like, right? So we argue less
yeah.
because people are actually watching us. So we have to like, we have to curtail,
Yeah.
language
I'm gonna
and
get you.
gestures and stuff.
Right.
I think we're in the house and we're trying to uh, decide on a character's name or decide on the character's motivation and things like that.
Mhm.
I think it could get a little heated only because I feel like uh, it's not necessarily India uh, don't want to. It's because I feel like I may know everything at that moment. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, like, oh no, they would never do that. So I feel like I would know everything. So a lot of times, like we've been in that situation, and India tell you, like, I'm always like, all right, let's go for a walk. Let's talk about this. And those morning walks or those evening walks always tend to be extremely, extremely helpful. And I'm able to be open and listen,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, because the thing is, also we both study people. Like when we're like developing characters and stuff like that, we have some similar perspectives, but we have differing is perspectives too, because we're looking at human behavior
Yeah.
sometimes from different points of view, I guess you could say. And because like my background is in art, but it's also in human behavior
Mhm.
psychology. Um, like a lot of times I'll just be looking at it, like I said,
Different.
just differently, or like I'll add something to it,
I love
which
that.
always is funny. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, it's sometimes it's It's something to love.
Yeah, it's not for
It's
everybody,
just
right? It's not for
it makes
everybody.
it interesting. Well,
No.
no, but the thing is like I think just in any writer's room,
Yeah.
like everybody's not going to have like the same. Everybody brings something different to the table,
Hmm.
and it creates a different fullness as
Yeah.
opposed to just one person working
Yeah.
on it. You could tell a lot of times when that
And I
happens.
read fiction books, and India doesn't read
Oh yeah,
fiction.
that's right.
Ah,
She's
The
more
other
okay.
into
thing.
nonfiction. So for nonfiction, she's seeing from a psychoanalytical, dynamic, she's seeing how things work differently
Uh-huh.
because she does read a lot of business books. She does read politics. She reads story like autobiographical books, autobiographies. She read biographies, like you name it. She reads it, and I'm more of I'm reading my Donald Goines. I'm reading
Right.
these. I just actually bought a book not the other day, and I need to finish
Nice.
reading it. So I like to read stuff like that, and it was really good. And I love how I can't think of the name of it, but I love how he's telling this story because he's telling this story, and I'm gonna say this real quick because this is where I started to like dive into my more creative side. Like she said, she's creative, it's just different.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So the way I shape it, then she kind of like helps. Like, all right, let's do this. I think you should do this, or you should write this, or what about this? And so that just gives me that other opportunity, the other
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, although I don't read fiction, I do enjoy fiction, but
Yeah.
it's just more like movies, television, things like
Oh
that.
yeah,
Yeah, like theater, different things like that. But I don't like. I don't know. I'm just not a person that likes to read fiction.
That's
So
okay.
it doesn't capture me. I don't know. So yeah, maybe it's that I need to see it visually or whatever. But yeah, that also helps with our differing perspectives sometimes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I have a fun question, and there is no wrong answer, I promise. The three levels of influence: money, power, and respect. If you could choose only one of those things, which one would you choose and why?
Um, for me, probably most likely would be influence, and the reason
wait a
is
minute, money, power, or
oh
respect.
respect. Oh, so, well, she said okay, money, power, respect. Oh man, I don't know. It's not really money. Um, I would just say power, and the reason why I said power is because
That's perfect.
power. Okay, first of all,
I love it.
okay, that's it. But power because it's a lot of levels of power. For me, my own personal power. My parents always empowered me.
Right.
I've always felt empowered. So yeah, power would be the thing for me because when you have power, you can gain respect and
Yep.
money.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I love it.
Sorry.
Oh my God. I'm not gonna comment on her answer because it's spot on because she really does think she runs everything. But anyway, for me, it would probably be respect. I think it would be more respect if I could have. I think respect go a long way.
Mhm.
I think it's one of the things that I teach my children is uh, respect and self respect.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you, I teach them self respect. Number one, you treat yourself how you want others to treat you.
Hmm.
And then number two, you treat others how, you want to be treated.
That's right. That's great.
So you start from there, and I think you could find your way into everything else, into the power and the money, and I think that's pretty much how that goes for me.
That's awesome. Great, great
Yeah.
answers. Great answers. The third
It's
annual,
respect on my name.
all right. The third annual Bloody Peach Film Festival takes place August the 28th through the 30th, 2026. What are you guys most excited about this year for the festival?
Ooh, if I can, I'm gonna go first. I'm excited. The main thing that I'm excited about is filmmakers getting their film shown
Yeah.
and being able to network with each other and hopefully some connections that will build from that. And I think that's the thing, and just being able to be in a position where you know marriage is hard, right? And I'm just talking, and I'm not just talking about India and I. I'm just saying marriage is hard in a way because, people have labored, really, really hard with other people to get this project picked up, and they want other people to see it. So that kind of marriage to the business, and that's the marriage I'm talking about. The marriage to the business is really hard, and sometimes you don't get back what you want. But any opportunity to show your work in front of one person to 100 people is a great start, and them asking questions and hopefully people will ask questions and people will meet the filmmakers and stuff like that. I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about is being around the filmmakers.
I love that. I
Uh,
love,
for me, is I'm excited because just to see the progression
yeah.
of the film festival. Um, I feel like over the past year, I've seen Chandrea and MJ like really say, okay, we're going to take this to the next level. And in doing that, we're going to assemble a board that can help us in a lot of different ways. And so I feel like that's what they've done. We're still like, a work in progress. But basically, by doing that, we all, even though most of us have like, we're artists in our own right in different ways, I feel like because we all have like different skill sets, that actually helps in the sense that we can help them bring their vision, to life even more. And I'm excited about the venues that we're having,
Yeah.
moving in the spirit, Modex, like everything that we're doing, screen on the green. Um, I just think that it's just going to be good to just see it on a different scale this
Yeah,
year.
that's exciting.
That's what I'm excited about the most.
That's awesome. Oh, it was a pleasure talking to you both. Where can people find you guys on social media to follow everything you guys got going coming up?
For me, it's just at Indie Titan, Indityton. You can find me anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for me, it's always at Instagram. It's at Legendary or at the Film Mechanics on Instagram. And I have a YouTube page that kind of go through some of the, just through the process and some of the writings, and I interview people. And that's the Film Mechanics, I think. I think that's what it's called. Yeah,
Yeah.
Film Mechanics.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys. It was so fun. Definitely. This is great.
Yeah,
Thank you for
absolutely.
coming on. Absolutely. And
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you so
Mo.
much for giving us this platform to talk.
Thank you so much.
absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
thank you all for listening. And always remember to live, love, laugh. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Peace.